Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John and this video is going to be what I've watched in the month of January 2023. Now I want to give a big shout out to Gary Watson for sending me the slip to this movie. So first off, me and the Debs watched Knives Out. Thanks once again Gary for sending me the slip. I bought this for £9.99 in the HMV, knowing full well that Gary had sent me the slip, so I was able to complete this release. So movies with a huge well-known cast has always appealed to me. So this movie here, it looks absolutely stunning on 4K. It's one of those really crisp pictures that you've got on a 4K. And the sound on it is great as well. Even though there's not that much sort of bombastic stuff happening in it, it's got a great soundscape. Now, this movie is a very clever movie, and also what I found is that I didn't think I would enjoy as much. The Daniel Craig performance in here is absolutely electric. I think he's a great actor, don't get us wrong. It's not as if I think he's just a one-trick pony with James Bond at all. But this movie, he really shines in this movie, and to be honest, when I saw a clip of this, and he had sort of this Southern American accent, I didn't know if he could pull it off, but for some reason he does, and also it really suits this character. So on that, for that alone, this performance is absolutely brilliant. Now this movie has a wealth of stars in it, and they all play great parts, and we were really invested with it, and we thought it was a great murder mystery suspense movie. So I watched Glass Onion as well. Now Glass Onion is on Netflix. Unfortunately, it hasn't got a physical media. Will it ever get one? I hope so, because on Netflix it looked absolutely stunning, looked much better than this one, and this one looked great. I think when it's set in an island in Greece, I think that's where it sort of shone with the whole vibrancy of the blue skies. So when I watched Glass Onion, maybe for the first 20 minutes, I was thinking, is this movie going to really tie in anything? Because it seemed to be a bit completely different to this one. And I was thinking, will I enjoy it? Will it go too different? But to be honest, I think it was a breath of fresh air to do that. And I think it was clever in the way that they made this movie. And it's equally as good as this. I think the pair of these are absolutely brilliant, and I really hope that Glass Onion does come out in the physical, because it would be a shame if it just was one of those movies on Netflix that just didn't ever surface. It would be a real shame, because I think the 4K could look absolutely stunning. So we really enjoyed this movie. It's got quite a few twists and turns in it, but I think Glass Onion has the more twists and turns, and I think the performances are equally as good as this one's got a better cast, but the cast in Glass Onion really works. So that's Knives Out and Glass Onion. So next up I watched Smile. I had a really good time in this movie. It's quite slow to start off with. It's got a really interesting premise in this movie, which I won't go too much into because I think it'd be quite a bit of a spoiler alert. I think you're best off not really knowing anything about this movie. It's got an amazing picture quality on this. It's got Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision. It's got a lot. And this movie is got some really good jump scares in it as well. It's got some really unnerving scenes in it. I wouldn't say it was like a really over-the-top gore fest, which got some gore in it. It's quite meandering at times, but I think I really like that. And obviously the woman in here is Kevin Bacon's daughter, because it's obviously I saw her name and I thought, right, hang on, is she related to Kevin Bacon? Yes, and it's his daughter, and she plays a really good part in here. But go into it and do know that you're going to have maybe it's more like a psychological one, and there is a storyline to it, but it's not really that obvious when it starts off. But I really do highly recommend it. Some people think it's a bit too slow, but for me it's got the right pace. I do think it maybe could have dropped 10 minutes out of the run time, but apart from that, I've got no problems with it. And do know that the sound quality is absolutely brilliant on here, and the jump scares when they happen, they take the roof off your house. So yes, so that's Smile. Next up I watched, probably for the millionth time, The Elephant Man on 4K. Now, as everyone knows, this is one of my favourite movies of all time. I just can't get enough of this movie. And it's funny because I do know this movie like the back of my hand. I watched it that many times, but every time I watch it, I always get the same kind of emotions out of it. Now, I've watched the 4K, I've watched this about maybe 3 times now, maybe 4 times. And I think, you think to yourself, right, I know the bits that really get me in this movie. And will it get me, because I've seen them that many times, will I start to get over the fact of them getting me? Because it didn't used to get as it when I first watched it, but now it seems to be getting worse. So when I watch this one now, the scenes that sort of trigger me in this movie were harder to watch than ever before. I don't know what it is about this movie. It's so emotional because it's so good. And this package is absolutely brilliant. This is the amazing Studio Canal version, which is the definitive one for me. And the picture quality on here is I mean, if you think that black and white doesn't translate into 4K, well, you're wrong, because this is just one of the best picture qualities I've ever seen in my life. It's crystal clear. The only thing I would have liked on here if it was a bit of a Dolby Atmos track on it, because although the soundtrack on here is brilliant, the Dolby Atmos on here would just add that little sort of, because it's got some great soundscapes from David Lynch, because he puts these weird sort of mechanical noises in the background of his movies, and they're in here as well. But this movie here, honestly, I was thinking to myself, right, I think I'll get through this movie, and I think I'll be, not as effective as I usually am, but I think it was worse on this watch. It was one of the hardest ones I ever watched. The trigger scenes for me always set us off, but they still got us this time round. But that's just the way it is. It's such an emotional movie, and such a brilliant movie as well. Obviously, this is probably, every time I watch this is going to be movie of the month. Now that wouldn't be fair on the other movies that I've got here, so just know this is like the honorary movie of the month. If you haven't seen this movie, do get it watched, because it's just an absolute classic. But it's a tough watch as well at times. It's got that really big emotional kick to it, but highly recommended. So that's The Elephant Man. So next up, I watched Critters. I watched the first movie, and I had a great time with it. It was one of those movies that's very much like an 80s cheese fest, and which is what I'm really into at the moment. So this movie looked pretty good on DVD, actually. It'll more than suffices until I get my hands on a Blu-ray, if it ever comes out in the UK. And I just found this movie to be very, very entertaining, and it's got a great soundtrack as well. So every time I hear Critters talked about, I always think about my good friend Jason Brett. I'll leave a link down to his channel down below, because he's coming up to 1,000 subscribers, which is a great achievement. And he's got some great stuff to do with Critters, and he's a big, massive fan of this franchise. He always talks about them. So for me, I always think about Critters. When I think of Critters, I always think about Jason Brett and his love for this movies. So I'm going to leave, like I say, just check that link out, and he's getting really close to 1,000 subscribers, which is great. So go and please check his channel out. So that's Jason Brett, link down below. So for me personally, if you like Gremlins, I think you'll have a really good time with this. It's very far-fetched, but hey, that'll suit me down to the ground. So that's Critters. Next up, I watched Halloween Ends. Now, let's talk about Halloween Ends, now without any spoilers. This movie is strange. I'll say it's strange. That's how I'll term this movie. It's not the best Halloween movie at all. It's got, actually, I would say 50% of the movie is quite good. If they hadn't have put a certain chain of events in it, I think this movie, if they took that storyline out and they'd done something else in the middle, I think this movie would have been a really good final part to the saga. And whether they go from here, I haven't got a clue. But the whole introduction of this Corey character in the middle of the movie, and I would say it's Laurie Strode's granddaughter, their relationship that they have is really, I'm going to say, annoying. I think that's the downside of this movie. I think it looks great, it sounds great, it's got some great ideas. I think the start of the movie is brilliant. I think the end of the movie is brilliant. I think this whole storyline that's in the middle is just a bit, and hey, some of these movies are quite unbelievable at times, but this one just goes into a stupid place. Now, horror movies in general can be stupid, and sometimes you get a right laugh, and sometimes you embrace the stupidity of some of the horror movies to think, come on, you're having a laugh here. But you just sort of take it on the chin and you just think, well, it is what it is. But wow, this movie sort of, I can understand how it divides people. So the pluses of it looks great, it sounds great, half of it's great. The downside of it is the middle bit, the whole storyline thing in the middle is quite, for me, I find it quite annoying. And I just think it was just a shame that they had to do it. Or if they put this in, they shouldn't have made it more or less the whole movie, like a thread running through it. Personally, I just feel a bit let down with it. But then again, when I got it, I knew full well that I wasn't going to go and see a masterpiece. Now, I wanted to get this because I wanted to get every Halloween movie. Now, the only ones I don't have is the ones that are that box set, which has I'm going to say, is it 6, 7, and 8? I think that's what numbers they are. And I will get it sometime, but I'm in no rush because I saw Halloween 6 round about Halloween last year, and I didn't like it one bit. In fact, I only watched half of it, but that was the normal cut, not the producer's cut, and I found it to be just pathetic. And to be honest, I think this one is better than Halloween 6, but then again, I haven't seen it fully, and I haven't seen the producer's cut, which is meant to be better. But anyway, I will watch the other three, but I'm in no rush to pick them up because, to be honest, I don't know if I would like. I love Halloween 1 to 5. I think they're all brilliant. Even Halloween 4 and 5, I just have a good time with them. But there's no point in me picking up that other three if I don't really like them at all. Plus, they're not cheap either. So anyway, yeah, Halloween Ends it's one of those movies where I would, if you're gonna get your collection and gonna keep your collection up with Halloween, just get this as cheap as possible and know you're gonna have some strangeness in the movie if you haven't seen it. And to be honest, Laurie Strode, I thought her character was brilliant in this movie after not really liking her in Halloween 2018. And yeah, so I think there's a few characters that I really liked and a few characters that I really didn't like. So a very mixed bag. So that's Halloween Ends. So lastly, and my recommendation of the month for January 2023 is Out of Order. Now this movie is a movie I got off John Hall. Now, a spoiler alert that this is one of the movies that I picked up. I haven't put this video out yet of the one that included this one. But when he gave us the stuff that he brought over, this was the one that I thought, when he explained it to us, I thought, I like the sound of that. So I went and watched it probably immediately the next day after he brought the stuff around. And I found this movie to be such a good movie. Now, this is the 4K, and it's from a label called Subculture, which I've never heard of. And you get the Blu-ray and you get the 4K in here. And I hadn't heard of this movie at all. This movie is region free, it says on here. I don't know about the Blu-ray disc. I think it will be because obviously it's German. You've got DTS HD and it's from 1984 and I think that says 88 minutes. So it's quite an easy watch. And I'll put the thing up there, you can read that and you can see what it says in there. And it's got this really intriguing story. It's got reversible art as well, which I'll show you. I did swap it around because I did when I watched it, although this does speak about the movie as well. For some reason, this picture here was the one that sort of reminded me more of the movie, if you know what I mean. So this movie was made in Germany, and you do get an English dub on here as well, which I watched the English dub, and I found to be very good. But the fact of these four people, and there's a story behind these four people. It's not just four people stuck in the lift trying to get out. There's a good backstory, and these characters are quite fleshed out in the escape of it just really going to the lift more or less at the start, and the lift gets stuck, and how do they get out of this lift? And there's a reason why they've got to get out of this lift. There's a reason why the struggle to get out of this lift, and there's a lot of dynamics that change when they're in the lift. And everyone's got, like I say, they've got a bit of a backstory, and it's just so entertaining. Like I say, it's just a short movie. I think the performances, especially from this girl here, were really good. Actually, there's a bloke in here as well. He's like the sort of hero, and his performance in here is absolutely brilliant. I would imagine that these are really well-known people. I'm sure I've seen her before, and I think the Paul Verhoeven movie Spetters, I'm sure she was in that. And I just had a really good time with it. And it's just know that it's quite a sort of like an easy tale of four people getting stuck in the lift, but there's a lot to it behind that, and as they are trying to get out of this lift, it's the dynamics are changing as well, and there's a few secrets that get sort of talked about or come out in this sort of like really claustrophobic movie. But I had such a good time with it. I was quite, and when they're stuck in the lift shaft and they're trying to get out of the lift, and there's all this like massive drops, it's quite scary actually at times. But I just thought this movie was a really good, like different movie, a movie that I'd never heard of at all. It's a movie that you don't see very often, and it was really well put together. And I just, sometimes you get a movie that you just think, wow, that was unexpectedly good. It was one of those ones when John talked about it. I don't know if he's actually seen this, but he mentioned it to me, that what was in it, and I thought that sounded really interesting. It really was interesting. So I can't recommend this highly enough. I don't know how easy it is to get. I think it's brand new release. So the picture quality on here was surprisingly good. Actually, it's got times when when they're in the lift, sometimes the picture quality in here is absolutely brilliant, and other times it's quite normal when they go outside the lift for other things that are happening in the building. Now you have got the choice on here. You can actually, when it comes up, I've never seen this before, you can play it with in HD or 10, or you can play it in Dolby Vision. Now, when I put them on, I tried them both, and I tried the HDR10 versus the Dolby Vision, and the Dolby Vision won out. There was no comparison for me. I thought on my setup, the Dolby Vision was by far the superior. So it was weird to actually get that option actually on the disc. So it's quite interesting that to find out what was the best between the two of them. So I don't know if you can get this one in the UK, but if you can get your hands on it, I do really recommend it for a kind of easy watch, but you're getting this really strange sort of very interesting dynamic story that's happening in this lift. That's my recommendation of the month for January 2023. That's Out of Order. So thanks for watching, you take care, and I will see you on the next video. Cheers.